questions? All in favor say aye, opposed say nay. Aye. Motion carries. I'm sorry, who's second? Second. Discussion. Motion to approve resolution regarding special education services, including withdrawal as presented.
Motion from the second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ludson?
Yes.
Mr. DeJulio?
Yes.
Mr. Adisavich?
Yes.
Mrs. Paletti? Yes. Mr. Bionda?
Yes.
Mr. Bellaford?
Yes.
Motion to approve the resolution regarding special education services, including withdrawal as presented. I'd like to recognize our visitors. Thank you for coming out such big numbers on a beautiful day. Several pieces of correspondence in our board packet. I would ask our secretary to read the West 40 letter, please.
Stand by. Correspondence from West 40, November 16, 2017. Dr. Paul Malley, Superintendent, 8150 West Lawrence Avenue, Norridge, Illinois, 60706. Dear Dr. O'Malley, based on information I have received and the lack of response from Adam McCready, I am taking the following action. Effective immediately, Mr. Adam McCready is hereby removed from his elected position as board member of Norridge School District 80 by virtue of the following statute. Section 3-15.5 of the school code allows the regional superintendent of schools or executive director of an intermediate service center, quote, to remove any member of a school board from office for willful failure to perform his official duties. 105 ILCS 5/3-15.5. Respectfully, Dr. Mark Kleisner, Executive Director.
Thank you. So we do have a vacancy of the board. We did post on our website, I believe yesterday, that there is an opening if anyone is interested to send a letter of intent. And so one of the things that once we receive that, we have actually 45 days from the date of that letter, which is last Thursday. Hopefully we would be able to pick a candidate by our next board meeting. So we'll probably need to, once we get some letters, to see what date can we come in and do an interview process and then make a decision. The next meeting is, because it's December, is the 12th of December. This is a letter of intent. And resignation. Several FOIAs, 3 from Mr. Morrow, 1 from Mr. Chesnick, 1 from Mr. Sela. And we go right into the presentation, deficit reduction plan by Dr. Schilling.
Earlier today, I had the opportunity to discuss the deficit reduction plan and update with the Finance Committee. So this, for those of you that were in that meeting, this is a repeat, so I apologize, but sometimes hearing it twice helps. So everybody will remember several years ago we identified that the district was having financial difficulty. We put together a multi-year deficit reduction plan. This was required by the state of Illinois because they require within 3 years that you be able to balance your budget, which means revenues and expenses have to equal each other, just like we would do if we had our own. So we put together the plan, we fashioned it in a way that we had a couple of referendum attempts, which unfortunately weren't successful. So the first year of the plan, we basically froze our expenditures and just basically cleaned up processes and so forth while we were working on gathering data and information. The second year of the plan is this year. And we identified a little over $750,000 worth of reductions. But for those of you that followed all of that dialogue, we started out looking at basically reducing all of the specials, like music, art, band, and all these sorts of things. When we finished, the board decided to go to grade centers, because going to grade centers, we could reduce the number of staff that we need by consolidating the grade levels, and hence keep music, art, band, and sports. So we did not do that reduction. Although for sports we did half of it because we no longer have 2 middle schools, we just have 1. So we were able to do that not painlessly, but with a lot less money than we originally had thought we would have to. So now we're at the third year. The third year is of the plan, and we don't have any more revenue. The state has basically, legislature, the House has passed a tax freeze. It has not been approved by the Senate nor Governor Rauner, so it isn't law yet. They can act on it in January or not. If there is a freeze, that's an additional challenge the district has to face because the tax cap CPI or our growth that was built into our plan was about 2%, 2 to 2.5% a year, and it would all of a sudden be 0. So it's like from getting a modest raise to no raise, and we would have to take that into account. Having done the grade centers, we're at a point now where we have to look at other areas in order to be able to reduce to make ends meet. So I made it a little simpler for this first presentation because instead of having all the funds and graphs and stuff, I dropped it just to big numbers. So you can see that right now we have about $1.9 million in the bank after basically having a deficit of $1.2 million this last year. And that was the year that we were just trying to maintain. And the good thing is that we had, our projection was that we said we wanted to keep this number. We told the board our benchmark was 11.8. So we came in below 11.8. That was the benchmark. So the second year, we're projecting about just a little under $500,000 deficit. But for the next 2 years, it's going to start creeping up again because again, we have salary increases and other things, and we're still in a relatively low inflation, and there was no miracle cure from the state. This district did not benefit from the new state aid formula whatsoever. And in fact, if you consider some of our other alternate revenues, we basically broke even. So this is what it looks like. We basically have 17% reserves right now, and in our operating funds, which are education, which is where we pay all our teachers, operation and maintenance, where we do all the building stuff, transportation, and then our reserves, is about 17%. We expect that if we did nothing to go down to 2%, but we can't let that happen because by the end of 18-19, that number, that 594, needs to be 0. That's the 3-year plan by the state board. So that's what we're looking at trying to fix. If there's a tax freeze and nothing changes, that number that we have to address is 762,000 by the end of 19. And you would see we would physically, if we didn't do anything, be out of money by 20. Now the good news is we would have already been broke if we hadn't done what we've done, and we wouldn't have started planning several years ago and been proactive. So the good part is that we've been proactive, and in school finance, the best thing that you can do is postpone everything and hope. Cross your fingers that the legislature comes out with more money, something happens, because we don't control our own revenue. We only control what we spend. You know, that's true of almost all of us. We can't get our boss to give us whatever we want, but we can control what we spend. That's the issue. So with that in mind, this is what it looks like with a tax freeze. The recommendation to balance the budget to the tune of about $100,000 plus or minus by the end of 19 would be a reduction of $800,000 for next year. That's a little bit more than what we did for this year. Roughly about the same because we ended up being closer to 790, which would keep, you'll see that the balance is down at the bottom around 13 to 17%. I should also tell you that if you looked at our audit this year, that we've dropped down, so we're now a district that's on official profile warning, meaning we've been cited that we're having financial problems besides the deficit reduction thing. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And part of that's because we dipped below the 25% fund reserve, which is one of the major markers, and the fact that we are spending roughly about 3 times what we, our reserves are only about 3 times what we, our deficit. So with all that in mind, I know this will be hard to read, so I'm going to kind of take you through it. In the past couple of years, we've had a number of community committees that have taken place over months. I think I told Paul, like, the first year we were working on the referendum, I think I went to like 45 meetings, because we had meetings on everything, okay? We looked at the world. And so we're down to just a few things. I mean, we've talked about these. So full day kindergarten is a program we saved for this year. It's not required by the state of Illinois. When we have to, it's required. Looking at a new schedule for the middle school based on experience and talking to our principals, there's probably an opportunity to save about $487,000 there. Music, as far as the band program, we talked about eliminating that. That's in scenario number 1. The rest of the sports, or limited sports like basketball and stuff, that is also, you can see the 36, and that represents 36,000. There's another 27 in unlimited sports, which I haven't included here. Meaning those are the things that every child can participate in. There's no limit, so you can have like 50 people on the track team or 35 on the clubs and stuff like that. The instructional technology and subs, that really doesn't affect anything in the classroom per se. Half the curriculum work reduction is something we've probably eliminated about 18 or 20,000, 15,000 for this year. We've eliminated another 50% of what's left. So that basically would get us to $883,000. It's another, basically 1 support staff person, 8.5 more teachers, 9.5 teachers, so and that gets us to that number. The alternative, because we're kind of out of options at this point, is we can look at keeping everything pretty much the way it is, with the exception of maybe a new school. We talked about 8.5 and charge fees for everything. And if the fees went, then fine. But the problem with that is you have to have somebody collect them and manage it, and the amount of the fees are significant. I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand how much it costs to run programs. So, for example, just to show you what it would cost, for kindergarten, it'd be about $2,000 a year if you wanted the other half day or full day program. Now, on one hand, you can say, wow, that's a lot of money. On the other hand, I can tell you from my own experience having done this before that there's nowhere for $200 for a half a day that you can get childcare, you know, for a month. So it depends on how you're going to look at it. If you needed it, you can pay for it. If you didn't, and you know, it's on a first come, first served basis. And then there, all these things underneath here are just things that the board would have to consider. So full day kindergarten would be offered, but it would be a sign up, it would be tuition based, and it would be run up until we need about 20 students to make it go. So if you got 20 students, we offer it. When you get to 22, we start looking for another section. You got to 40, we could offer 2 sections and just basically keep going. If you didn't get signed up, you're on a waiting list. So that's what it would look like for full day kindergarten. Extra co-curricular fees. I divided these into 2 groups. The first group is limited participation. The second group is unlimited participation. And the only difference is that, like, for example, boys basketball, there's 15. That's it. You know, or whatever the number is, that's all that's on the team. Whereas on the stuff on the bottom, as many kids can participate as possible. So the way that, for all those sports up there, you got or non-sports, cheerleading, soccer, softball, that stuff, would be $165 a sport.